The Yardbirds were a seminal mid-60s rock band whose personnel over time included Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page. As a teenager, I traded my Yardbirds album to a friend straight up for his copy of an album by the Monkees. Everyone thought I got the better end of the deal. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 17, Chapter 13.
The Monkees.
I was thinking about the Monkees recently, my skilled musical bartering aside, and about their significant role not in music per se, but certainly in pop culture. The Monkees may not have changed music, but they played a huge role in changing movies forever. More on that coming up. The podcast inspired by an interview I watched recently with Mickey Dolenz. Dolenz was vocalist and drummer with the band, and recently, turning 80, he is the last surviving member. Davy Jones passed in 2012 at age 66, Peter Tork in 2019 at 77, Michael Nesmith in 2021 at age 78. On a side note, Billy Corgan, he's the lead of the band The Smashing Pumpkins, has a podcast called The Magnificent Others. I watch it on his YouTube channel. That's where I saw Mickey Dolenz. And it's not that I learned anything new about the band, but again, it really got me thinking about the Monkees and their significant spot in pop history. And there's so much interesting information surrounding this group, this TV show, this concept. Some may call it trivia. I don't think it's trivial at all. So this week, let's go through it. Bob Rafelson's legacy as a filmmaker-director may be Five Easy Pieces, or King of Marvin Gardens, or the remake of The Postman Always Rings Twice, and so many others. But in 1962, as a young, struggling writer, he had this idea, a TV show about a band. There'd be music and wacky adventures. He pitched the idea to the TV arm of Universal Pictures. They passed. By 1964, Rafelson had hooked up with another young producer, Bert Schneider. Bert's dad, Abraham, was head of Colpix Records and of Screen Gems. Screen Gems was the TV arm of Columbia Pictures. Inspired not only by the Beatles and Beatlemania, but by the success of the Beatles movies Hard Day's Night and Help, they renewed Rafelson's show idea. Bert called Dad. Screen Gems bought the idea on April 16th, 1965. And let me add some context here to the times as I remember them. And with all due respect to Elvis, Little Richard, and Jerry Lee Lewis, et al., it was the Beatles that blew up the popular music industry in the early to mid-60s. Within months of the Beatles, we had the Stones, the Who, the entire British invasion, Motown, quickly followed by the LA and San Francisco music scenes, psychedelia, acid rock, hard rock, progressive rock, Woodstock, and it wasn't even 1970 yet. A cultural explosion in a compact era of time. The youth suddenly not only had a soundtrack, they had a fashion, a hairstyle, and a voice. Movies and TV weren't really reflecting any of that. Certainly not in a positive way. Just go back and watch. A lot of those 60s movies showed youth and pop music as a drug-induced burden on society. On Dragnet, Joe Friday was still running in those dirty hippies. The Midnight Special wouldn't be on for another 5 years. MTV was 15 years away. As a kid, I had to work hard to find my music on television. I guess this is my musical version story of having to walk to school and back 5 miles each way uphill in 3 feet of snow. But yeah, it was kind of like that. You know, you kids got it easy. In my day, you had to search and sleuth your way through media to find your music. Well, yeah, the UK had Top of the Pops, but we didn't get that here. The US had some shows, Dick Clark's American Bandstand, Shindig, Hullabaloo, and Your Hit Parade, but we didn't get those where I lived. For a while, the CBC had a summer replacement show out of Vancouver called Let's Go. They'd have rock bands on, and you'd have to rush home to watch that. And when you did, you watched it with your parents in the other room shouting, Turn that crap off. You'd meet your friends. Hey, did you hear? Word is the Animals are going to be on Ed Sullivan this week. The Doors are supposed to be on the Smothers Brothers. Bob Dylan is on that Johnny Cash show. You had to know this ahead of time. And there was no taping shows. You had to be there. I would buy those magazines. My friends made fun of me because they were intended for teen girls. 16 and Tiger Beat. But I bought them because at least there were some stories about pop artists. Yeah, okay, maybe it was about Dino, Desi, and Billy, or that cute Peter Noon of Herman's Hermits, or that dreamy Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders. But at least it was a visual representation of the music I was hearing on the radio. Rolling Stone magazine was out, but it wasn't really a thing yet. Yes, ancient times, I get it. In many ways, today's system is better, but there's something to be said for our dedication and what it required just to be a rock fan. This was the general atmosphere in which the Monkees entered the zeitgeist. So Rafelson and Schneider had a deal with Screen Gems. Screen Gems had NBC interested in picking up this series. They had a record company ready to distribute the records, which of course would be promoted by a band who had a network TV show on every week. All very symbiotic. And this was mainstream Hollywood thinking that they were entering the world of rock and roll. I refer to it as American popular culture trying to pretend that they were counterculture. Although they also wondered, who is this audience that we're after? These kids. Are they consumers? After all, we make our money selling ads on our programs. Other than records, what are they buying? Anything at all? Don't they believe in free love and free everything? Oh well, what the hell? Let's give it a shot. The idea was for the band to be real. Kinda, sorta, maybe mostly. They wanted to audition actors who were also musicians, and musicians who could act. Famously, people like Stephen Stills, David Crosby, and Paul Williams auditioned. Can you imagine if Stills and Crosby got the gig? Would we later have the Monkees, Nash, and Young? It was actually Stephen Stills who recommended his friend Peter Tork try out. So the Monkees cast was set. The actor-musicians would all use their own names. I guess this would add to the, authenticity? Peter Tork grew up in Connecticut. He was a musician, part of the New York City Greenwich Village folk scene. That's where he met Stephen Stills, who suggested they all move to L.A. Perhaps the musicians were like the comedians. You know what the comedians say? You move to New York to get good, and then you move to L.A. to get famous. Nevertheless, Tork could sing a bit. He also played guitar, banjo, and keyboards. Michael Nesmith was a singer-songwriter, originally from Houston, Texas. He could play guitar, keyboards, and bass. Davy Jones hailed from Manchester, England. He was a theater singer-actor. He'd actually appeared in the Broadway musical Oliver as the Artful Dodger. And hey, it's always good to have a little British invasion in a brand new American TV rock band. Mickey Dolenz came from a showbiz family. His parents were both actors, although his mom left the business to raise a family. Mickey Dolenz had already been on network television as Circus Boy, a short-lived series. He was a child star who had quit the business to go into architecture, but he still went out for auditions occasionally. And after several callbacks, he got the Monkees gig. Dolenz could sing and play a little guitar. Oddly, he did not play drums. The musical director of the show initially was Don Kirshner. He was a producer, manager, impresario type. Two problems with Kirshner. First, he was just a little older. Just older enough not to be hip to the scene, if you know what I mean, man. Dude. And secondly, he was in New York, so not able to fulfill the day-to-day requirements of an LA production. Quickly, instead, the show hired Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, already somewhat successful singer-songwriters from California, and they were about the same age as the Monkees. Boyce and Hart wrote a lot of the early Monkee songs, including the Monkees TV theme song, Hey Hey We're the Monkees, and Last Train to Clarksville, among others. The show also used songs from many up-and-coming young songwriters like Neil Diamond, Harry Nilsson, Carole King, and more. The Monkees debuted on TV in September of 1966. and the show was a hit. Last Train to Clarksville quickly became #1 on the charts that fall, as did their debut album, The Monkees. It had that Beatlesque kind of cover. Yeah, it was good. I traded a Yardbirds album for it. Most TV shows do 20 or so episodes per season. Season 1 of The Monkees, they did 32, 26 in Season 2. And by the way, that's it. The Monkees did 58 episodes that ran in September of 1966 to March of 1968. That's all. It may seem longer because both CBS and ABC would air reruns in syndication. And then again in 1986, a whole new generation discovered the wacky band on MTV. MTV picked up the series and ran all 58 shows. Interesting that though the producers wanted actual musician types in the band, the boys did not play their own instruments in Season 1. This became a point of contention, and by Season 2, led mostly by Nesmith, they demanded that they have more musical input. Eventually, they did play more and more. They already sang on all the Monkees hits. Dolenz did learn the drums, and they wrote or co-wrote a lot of the songs. Some of their musical development was precipitated by the fact that they booked a Monkees live tour. It was set for the summer of 1967. So in short order, after a hectic season of shooting a TV show, 32 episodes, these 4 guys had to learn how to play live. As Mickey Dolenz has said, the Monkees were never a band. The Monkees was a TV show about a band. Well, that's true enough, but they certainly had to become a band very quickly. When they played live, they couldn't fake it, like TV. TV can fake it. As I said earlier, they did have skills. They did work their butts off. They rehearsed like crazy. And by the time the tour came around, they were pretty good. At least they didn't suck. Hey, they were the Monkees. People cheered. And by the way, on 7 of those touring dates, the opening act was Jimi Hendrix. Buoyed by the success of the TV show, the tour, and the second season renewal, producers also planned a movie.
Columbia Pictures presents The Monkees. Mickey, Davy, Mike, Peter in Head. That's right, Head.
Head came out in November of 1968. Footnote, back in the day, head was not a euphemism for oral sex. Or it might have been already, what do I know? I was a kid. Free love was happening somewhere, but certainly not at Holy Cross Catholic High School. No, head was a term for a hippie. Heads, or a head, was what the hippies called themselves before they called themselves hippies. Through time, it's often just referred to as the Monkees movie, but Head was the official title. It was directed by Bob Rafelson, co-written by Rafelson and Jack Nicholson. Yes, that Jack Nicholson. On some sites, Dolenz also gets a writing credit. And he remembers clearly Nicholson coming onto the set of the Monkees show, the two of them hanging out and talking about movie ideas. Head was a comedy, slapstick. There was music pieces, social commentary. It was madcap.
Head is the most extraordinary adventure western comedy love story, mystery drama, musical documentary satire ever filmed.
Near the end, during a western scene, featuring Terry Garr, by the way, Dolenz breaks character, tells everyone to stop pretending that this is all fake. And then in a huff, he turns around and walks right through the painted paper backdrop. Just tears it open and walks onto the movie lot.
Oh, I don't want to do this anymore, man. Oh, these fake arrows and this junk and the fake trees. Bob, I'm through.
Well, Mickey, wait a minute. Well, Mickey, wait a minute, man. I'm with you.
Critics have said that the movie Head represented an end to the old Hollywood, a literal teardown of this fantasy factory, exposing it for what it was. Apparently, Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper were on the set a lot. Bob Rafelson, in his way, was presiding over the new wave of Hollywood, and he was doing it with Monkees money. You could say the Monkees begat 5 easy pieces, and in its way, also Easy Rider. Soon came Scorsese, De Niro. Hey, it's not a stretch to trace this back to the Monkees. The Monkees, though they had wonderful manufactured pop songs around them, will not be remembered for their great contribution to music, as much as I think they were a vehicle for change in movies, and had provided not only the money, but the idea for the rise of independent films, which led to the crumbling of the old studio system. So the Monkees, maybe they were too busy singing to put anybody down, but they did just that. There's so much social content around this show and these actor-musicians. As I said, some people might call it trivia, but I think it's wonderful. Again, Peter Tork was a friend of Stephen Stills, who was actually considered for the show. Davy Jones was on Broadway in Oliver. The cast of the show, including Davy, did a musical number on The Ed Sullivan Show one Sunday in February of 1964. However, most people will remember that show for another performing act, the Beatles. When the Beatles debuted in North America on The Ed Sullivan Show, Davy Jones was also on that episode. And there was another English artist named David Jones who had received a recording contract and was about to release a single, but it was thought, gosh, they'll confuse your name as one of the Monkees. So instead, the song Space Oddity came out by the artist David Bowie. Michael Nesmith's mother invented whiteout when she was working as a secretary in the 1950s. She first called it mistake out, later changed to whiteout, then liquid paper. It's now a very outdated method of correcting typing mistakes. Eventually she quit her secretarial job, worked in the company full-time, grew it, and sold it to Gillette in 1979 for an estimated $48 million. Michael Nesmith wrote the song Different Drum, which became a huge hit for a band called the Stone Ponies, lead vocalist Linda Ronstadt. And though Nesmith did not invent music television, he is considered a pioneer and an architect of the modern music TV format. After the Monkees, he had a vision of the future. He and his company, Pacific Arts, created a music video program called Pop Clips. They also developed and sold the concept of a television network devoted to music videos, with Pop Clips serving as a major model for the creation of MTV. As mentioned, Mickey Dolenz was a child actor in Circus Boy. His father was an actor, George Dolenz, who spent many years on TV as the Count of Monte Cristo. Also, he appeared in several Bonanza episodes. He used his money to open up a restaurant, the Marquee, on Sunset Boulevard, that would be a Hollywood landmark for decades. After the Monkees, Mickey wanted to write, produce, and direct. He was interested in getting behind the scenes. He had directed an episode of the Monkees, so he made up a little resume. His wife was English, so he eventually got a job directing drama for the BBC, where he stayed for 15 years. Dolenz Jones, Boyce and Hart toured briefly in 1976. They could not use the name The Monkees or that famous guitar logo. Well, they could, but it would have been cost prohibitive. Nesmith and Tork were invited to be part of the tour, but they declined, although that summer Tork did make a couple of guest appearances on stage. When MTV began to air the Monkees show in the mid-'80s, there was a renewed interest. Their songs were back on the radio. Their albums were selling again. Dolenz, Jones, and Tork had a brief 20th anniversary reunion tour. Once again, Nesmith declined. I should note here that that's really the only way they could make any money off being the Monkees, is being paid to play live. The Monkees did receive some royalties and publishing fees on their music, and that was only after demanding a renegotiation of their original contracts. However, they were paid $450 each per episode in Season 1, $750 per show in Season 2, and get no TV residuals, and virtually nothing from Monkees merchandising. No Monkees got rich from the Monkees. The year after the Monkees were off the air, the number one song of the year, 1969, was the Archies' Sugar, Sugar, in the Billboard Top 100 Singles Chart of 1969. There are the Beatles, Temptations, Creedence, Sly and the Family Stone, so many others. But they're not number one. Number one is Sugar, Sugar by the Archies. I don't know that that was the fault of the Monkees. I'm just saying it was an interesting turnabout. You know, the big TV rock bands that tried to make the charts were the Archies, Josie and the Pussycats, the Banana Splits, the Partridge Family, the Brady Kids, but it all started with the Monkees in 1966. Rafelson and Schneider sold all the Monkees intellectual property years ago. It's now owned by the Warner Music Group, including music rights. There are some legal challenges from some of the band members' estates. Isn't it all amazing? Stephen Stills, Bob Rafelson, Jack Nicholson, Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, Easy Rider, the Beatles, Ed Sullivan, Charles Dickens, Circus Boy, Sunset Boulevard, The Count of Monte Cristo, Bonanza, Linda Ronstadt, Liquid Paper, David Bowie, MTV. They all float like satellites in a Monkees universe. Noteworthy also that Mickey Dolenz sued the FBI in 2022. That's after the agency did not respond to his request for the Monkees files under the Freedom of Information Act. According to the LA Times, the redacted Monkees files included claims of subliminal messages in their music of a left-wing political nature related to the Vietnam War. And apparently that lawsuit is still without resolution. Hey, good luck, Mickey, with what is now Trump's FBI. You have a problem with those Monkees? Well, we'll exhume their bodies and then deport them. What, Mickey Dolenz is still alive? Well, he lived in England for a while. He's probably here illegally. So, Alligator Alcatraz. Wow, you know, maybe during Apocalypse Now, they shouldn't have been playing Creedence. They should have been playing the Monkees. I was thinking about this, you know, as the Monkees theme song says, come and watch us sing and play. Because we're the young generation, and we got something to say. The Pinkos, right?
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.